host. Welcome to my first interview. I'm going to be interviewing my friend Randolph Macias. I've known him for a long time. I've known him for about 38 to 40 years. He's a good friend of mine. He was in the military. He's done several things in his life that I'm proud of, he's proud of, and I want you to know what he's done so you could see that public service is a great thing. It is something that most of us should do in our lifetime so we can gain the respect and the knowledge that we have for the men and women who put their lives on the line. So welcome, Randolph Macias.
Pleasure, thank you.
Randolph, I have a couple of questions for you. I know the audience wants to know as well. So my first question is, where have you lived before you moved to the town in which you live now?
I used to live in northwestern Illinois, small town, mostly rural. Grew up, my dad was, stepdad, he worked at the mill. And so, if you weren't a farmer or you weren't working at the mill, then you were in a profession like a doctor or a lawyer, just a real small town, a family atmosphere. Everybody knew everybody, and it was fun. I really liked it.
Okay, what city do you live in now?
Right now, I reside in San Antonio, Texas. The weather here is, well, the Texas heat is back, as we all know that you know that I live in here as well. The humidity and stuff like that. So it's just a beautiful city to live in. The Alamo is here, and I love all aspects of this beautiful town, and I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I've lived here in this town for about 38 years, or about 40 years. I've lived here about 40 years myself. I really like it here. So yeah, I wouldn't give up San Antonio for anything. So, but yeah, hey, that's great to hear. I have a couple of questions for you. First question is, what led you to join the military?
Well, I had a sense of duty, but this primarily was because I wanted to follow in the footsteps of my father, who was a United States Marine in Vietnam. And also, I realized that my grandfather before him served World War II Army as well. And so I just wanted to follow into the legacy of service of my father and my grandfather, and wanted to, it caused me to become a lot more patriotic since I got out. But I really wanted to do something that would make a difference. That was my main goal. My main mission is to make a difference.
Well, excellent. We're very happy that you did. Thank you for your service.
It was a pleasure to serve. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what branch of the military that you wound up joining?
Well, I joined the United States Army primarily for reasons that I wanted to join specifically in combat arms. So what was available at the time is, or at that time, I joined 19 Kilo, which is a military occupational specialty called armored crewman. So I loaded tanks, I drove tanks, changed tank track, everything that goes with the tank. I pretty much did it. Got to fire the main gun. That was fun. But that was primarily the reason why I wanted to join, because I wanted to, again, make a difference. And if if it ended up my life being on the line, I would consider it an honor and a privilege to preserve the freedoms that we enjoy today.
Well, yeah, that's pretty neat. That's something I've known you for years and years. I didn't know that you actually did work on the tank, that you changed the track. I mean, I know you shot the gun, and I know you loaded it, and you were trained on things like that, but I didn't know you actually worked on the tank, changed the track and things like that. So yeah, hey, I'm learning as we go, and that's awesome. I like that. How old were you when you joined the military?
I was 22 years old. Previously, I had worked at JCPenney's, and I don't know why I just got the itch at that particular time to walk in the Army recruiting station and say, "Hey, you guys," and said, "Yes, we are," all the time. And the rest, I say, is history.
What would you say would have been the hardest part about your role in the military at that time? What would you say would be the hardest part of being in the military?
The hardest part would be being away from my family for extended periods of time. I was single at the time, but I enjoyed living close to my family here in San Antonio. So being away for an extended period was something that I kind of didn't look forward to, but I knew that at this point in my life, I had to make had to jumpstart, my life goals. And if that required moving away from home for an extended period of time, possibly going overseas to either fight or train or whatever, which we did go out of the country once to go and train on some British Challenger tanks. It was fun seeing Europe. That was the hardest part, was cutting those ties and moving on, and
Being away
you
from family. Yeah.
know, full grown man with this
Yeah.
own.
Was that your first time ever being away from family, or had you done it a little bit before?
That would be the first time that I actually moved away from at that time my mom and my stepdad, and my grandmother who was alive at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and so and back then, there were no cell phones. There was only pay phones, and there was no internet that I was really available for me to use at that time. So yeah, it kind of cut me off from a lot, and I kind of ventured on into a different way of living, so to
Mhm.
speak.
When you told your family you were going to join the military, you planned to join the military, how did your family react to that?
Well, there are two sides of the spectrum on that, mom and my dad. My mom was fully supportive of me, and considered it an admirable thing, considering she knew that my dad was a Vietnam vet. And then I had told my dad, who I could only talk to on the phone periodically, uh, he had encouraged me to not join at all. And the reason being was I could see it in his eyes. An observer of my dad's how he felt. He suffers from PTSD, which was then known as shell shock.
Mhm.
Uh, and I don't think he wanted me to experience the gore of war or anything like that, like he saw, which led him to where he was as a 100% disabled Vietnam vet who retired because of his illness. Um, he had objections to me wanting to join. I told him, Dad, I feel the calling to serve more than ever.
Mhm.
And he said, well, son, you do what you think is best. And I said, Dad, I want to do this to honor you and make a difference for the better in our country.
I'm sure when you were in the military, you made lots of friends all around the world, not just friends who were in your squad, but you probably made other friends. How many of those people do you still keep in contact with today?
Multiple, including my own cousin, second cousin, who I discovered was in basic, we were in processing together. And then I recognized his last name and I said, are you? And he said, well, yeah. And then we figured out we were second cousins. Ironically, we
Well,
had been stationed at the,
you found this out at the time when you were in the military that you were both in, or you're talking about afterwards?
no, but when we were in processing, we were
Mhm.
all together at the very, very beginning before we even got
Okay.
assigned to our units. Uh, we just happened to run into each other and we threw out family names that we both recognized. And I felt it was my cousin. And yeah, he moved on with me to the same place that we served at. And also, yeah, well, he was always by my side in the same post the whole time I was in.
So he was in, I guess, I'm not sure what you call a unit. He was in the same unit or type of work that you were doing. Is that what you're saying?
We were both tankers, and but we were assigned to different units. This was the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Mine was the 1st 68th Armor Regiment, which were both happened to be stationed at Fort Carson.
Obviously, you're not in the military right now. You're a retired vet. So let me ask you, did you put in time to get the retirement, or did you get disabled during wartime, or were you disabled physically, or can you kind of give us a little bit reason why you're not still in there right now?
Well, first of all, I didn't mean to, I'm not retired because I didn't serve an extended period of time to warrant retirement, although I just the veterans who did.
Mhm.
Uh, I, uh, I honorably separated. My time essentially was fulfilled. But I honorably separated, and okay, I thought since I'm honorably separated, I'm going to get back into the civilian workforce.
Mhm.
And so, luckily, which I didn't know at the time until I got out, there is a law that allows veterans who serve certain periods of time in the service, um, they're they're guaranteed their job by law. So, in other words, I could go back to where I was previously employed right before I left to serve and be
Oh, they hold your position.
essentially, yes, I would retain
Okay.
all my
Cool.
seniority and everything. And
Mhm.
so that was comforting to know. Oddly enough, due to a small little loophole in the law saying that I was required to let my employer know that I was leaving to join the service.
Mhm.
written them a note, a full page of resignation, but they didn't hire me. I don't think they wanted to hire me back. I don't know why, which is very dishonorable. But they didn't hire me back because I didn't put specifically that I was joining the United States Army. I didn't put in, I put everything perfectly except that I was putting to join the United States Army.
Mhm.
And that's why they didn't have me back. And I was very, very upset and very frustrated because at that point I became unemployed after I got out of the service. So I continued to seek avenues of where I would be the best fit. And so I've always been good with people. And frankly, there's no jobs out there in my military occupational specialty, dealing with tanks in the civilian sector.
Yeah.
There's just not. That
Mhm.
what I did was combat related. So that's what we have policemen for.
Mhm.
But I eventually found my place, and I was a merchandise supervisor at Planet Hollywood in downtown San Antonio for a few years, and
Yeah.
I moved on to pretty much in the restaurant and hospitality industry because I'm really good with people, and so I felt that's where my talents could be best used at that point after my military career ended.
Mhm. If I'm not mistaken, weren't you a singer and a piano player at one point?
Yes, and I still am. I love music with a passion. I'm currently active in my choir at church. Uh,
Excellent.
and so that has been an outlet for me that has helped me uh, cope with a lot of the stuff that I deal with uh, being a disabled vet and all. Uh, trying to find my sense of purpose. And so once again, going back to I want to make a difference.
Mhm.
Uh, Felt that I made a difference when I was in the service and served my country honorably. So as a civilian, not being able to get a job, as a tanker in the civilian sector, I discovered that my voice would be best suited for making a difference in the spiritual lives of people of my church, and so that has brought me a sense of um, satisfaction, so to say. And so I'm very happy doing what I do, and but I mean, primarily for making money wise, everybody has to make money.
Mhm.
Um, I decided to stay in the restaurant hospitality sectors of employment, and I've been relatively successful.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have sung the national anthem at a few different events in the recent past. Is that correct?
That is correct on multiple occasions. So when I was active duty, I sang the national anthem for my basic training. But prior
Okay.
to that, I think I was 13 years old. I barely moved to San Antonio, and at the time they were erecting or dedicating rather the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in downtown San Antonio next to St. Mark's Episcopal Church in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was asked by a real estate developer who is also a philanthropist, Jonathan Daines, to sing the national, well, not the national anthem, that they would sing "America the Beautiful."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to be 13 years old and sing in front of multiple units of all services, and in front of the Marine Commandant, which to me kind of represented my dad standing behind me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, was just very meaningful to me.
Oh,
To sing America the Beautiful. And I also sung at Sunken Gardens Theater for the small event that they had there as well. And so he decided after I sung at Sunken Gardens to, ask me to sing the America the Beautiful anthem there. And it was very humbled. I still remember it, and I'm very, very keen on visiting that memorial and reliving that moment because it was very.
that's awesome. That's great to hear. You see in movies, I know you see in movies, and I've seen movies where vets coming home or who are here, have a hard time dealing with the VA and things never seem to go well for them or anything like that. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience with the VA? Are things going like we see in the movies, or are things exaggerated in the movies?
Things are definitely exaggerated in the movies because it's primarily for entertainment purposes. Certain elements I think the producers try to get right, but most of the time they get them wrong or just fictionalize them entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But I first started receiving my VA disability compensation a few months ago, and so I'm relatively new to the system. But a veteran, fellow veteran, a patron of the restaurant I work at, had told me, you need to apply for this. I said, I thought I didn't have any idea that I would be approved. But so I applied for the disability, and I got it in 15 days. All my back pay came in the mail on December 24th on Christmas Eve. So you can imagine what a Merry Christmas that was to me.
Good Christmas to you. Yeah.
Well, so I'm like, I never saw the government work this fast in my entire life. But the VA itself, it's a constantly evolving, environment. It always depends on who the administration is and stuff like that, and how presidents carry out and get their people out there to complete the mission that they envision should be appropriate for a veteran of any war, of any service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very satisfied with the VA service that I've received. Things happen very quickly. The programs are evolving. Recent executive orders were signed to speed up the waiting process of any given treatment. Before it was months. Now I can get seen within a week less for anything that I might need. This is across a full spectrum of medical care. So I am extremely satisfied with the VA as it is right now, and it's being administered our president.
Yearly, when there's events, generally like say in a 4th of July event or Memorial Day weekend event, do you usually attend most of those? Events?
Yes, whenever I find any official event honoring our country or our fallen of any type. Most recently, the touring of the replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall that is currently in Washington, D.C. Was placed at Fort Sam Houston, and I went out for that, and I did the little video on Facebook, calling out various names of the fallen as I was passing by to one side of the wall to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, Memorial Day at Fort Sam was the most beautiful I've ever seen in my entire life. So any way I can help to honor a veteran of any service of any kind, if I see a veteran anywhere, I always try to make the effort to thank them for their service. And whether or not they recognize me as a fellow vet or not, whatever their big or small, whatever their job was, they all served and they all wore the uniform and they all took an oath of enlistment that I'm pretty sure is identical to the one I took many years ago. So they need to be recognized at any given time, because it really makes their day. And
yes, sir.
And as always, I say, this is always a pleasure to serve. It is. It truly is.
Excellent. Well, I know what you mean as a police officer. When somebody tells me they see me in uniform and they recognize me as a police officer, especially the younger kids are the ones who do it the most. But they come up to me and they say they want to shake my hand. Thank you, officer, for your service. Thank you for what you do. Keep us safe. Make us feel good. And that makes me feel really good. So yeah, sometimes it almost brings me close to tears, because I know that somebody cares that I put my life on the line for them. So I know you have to feel the same way. So that's awesome. That is awesome.
I thank you for your service as a police officer and protecting the community and putting your life in your fellow officers' hands and keeping the peace ultimately amongst the civilians.
Okay, I have another question for you, and this was something that I was kind of wondering about. I've been meaning to ask you on. Are you part of a VFW, your local VFW? And if you are part of your local VFW, are you part of the, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, the legislative body or decision-making process within that VFW?
Well, I am a member of the VFW post number 871, but as I was not deployed for wartime service, I was able to join with my dad as a sponsor in the VFW auxiliary. So that's during the time I was in, none of us were deployed to go to any active war that was occurring at that time. The president never ordered us to go anywhere during the time I was in my particular unit. So as a result, I'm the member of an auxiliary of that VFW, and pretty soon I'll be trying to join into the American Legion, which is made specifically for soldiers who served during war eras, if you will. And so, they make a difference by being an advocate for the veteran, homeless vets, or any vets that need anything, any assistance, maybe with their disability compensation papers, whatever the case may be, they're always there. And it's a very admired organization. And it's also where I make sure, since I respect the flag a great deal, I try to make sure that if I find out if there's any disposed of people want to get rid of their flags, I make sure that they're disposed of in the proper and dignified manner that they deserve.
And curiosity has got me on this one. Let me ask you, from my knowledge, the way a flag is supposed to be disposed of is there's supposed to be a ceremony, and then the flags are supposed to be burned. Is that correct?
Yes, it is supposed to be. Well, you put the flag when you're transporting a disposed flag. You just don't throw it in the back of your car, naturally.
Yeah.
What I personally is, I would put it in a paper bag or a plastic bag, or a way that somebody would not see that the flag was being, just thrown about. And I would transport it to the VFW, give it to the commander at the post, and request that the flag be retired from service. And there is a ceremony. I haven't been a part of it, but I'm told that there's a ceremony honoring the flag, and then the flags are burned in a dignified way so that you cannot see the flag burning, but it's covered up when it is burned along with other flags to retire them properly and give them the respect that they deserve in a dignified way.
So, Mr. Macias, let me ask you, what was your rank when you left the military?
I was E2.
E2, okay. And can you kind of give us a little bit of an idea, what is E2? Is that, I remember when my brother went in back in the late 70s, they called the recruits who were in basic training pickles because they wore green, and so they called them pickles. And obviously your rank wasn't pickle. It was E2. I think that E2 refers more to the pay grade. Is that right? Okay. So what was your rank at the time?
I was an E2. I was a private.
Private. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Do they still call them pickles?
Well, the uniform has changed now, so I think that terminology may be phasing out.
Okay. Okay. So it's something different now. Yeah.
Class A uniforms were like an olive green, looking like a pickle. Now they're more of a dark navy, which is a lot nicer, which I wish I could have had the honor of wearing. But
is that all across? Is that all branches of military use that color uniform? Is it kind of like one uniform for everybody when they're in basic, or does it matter on the branch that you're in?
Well, it definitely determines on the branch. Air Force will always be Air Force blue. Army has always been green, and Marines have been red or brown. It's just a mixture of different, depending on the type of service.
Let me ask you a question, because this actually happened to me. If when you went to join the military, you couldn't join the military for whatever reason, in my case, it was because I had pins in my ankles, so I couldn't join the military. So if you wanted to join the military and you couldn't have, what career path do you think you might have gone down?
Actually, now that you mention it, I had mentioned earlier that music was something that I really enjoyed. So it'd been my lifelong dream to be a recording artist, and I really wanted that to take off. But the business is very competitive, as you may or may not know, or your viewers may or may not know. It's not only you have to have talent, you got to have everything else.
Yeah, know the right people. Yeah.
Very brutal in that type of profession. So I was kind of hoping that would happen. It didn't. So eventually I moved on to retail and a little bit of hospitality industry and stuff like that. And then that's when I got the itch. I said, you know what, let me really make a difference and see if I want to serve my country. So I decided.
Well, we're, like I said, again, we're glad you did. And once again, thank you for your service. Well, Mr. Macias, I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time. I do appreciate you taking a few hours out of your day so we can get this recording done. And I want to say I appreciate you answering all my dumb questions. This is my first interview with a veteran. I appreciate it. And thank you for some of the things that I didn't know about. I appreciate you, being candid and opening up about some of the things I didn't know about. And hey, come to think of it, I do have a couple of old flags. I've replaced my flags on a fairly regular basis. I do have a few old flags.